chosen links. Chosen links by Boaz.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of Chosen Links. I am Boaz Hepner, and I really appreciate everybody for coming together. This is an episode that really shows how dedicated some people really are in their advocacy work. And I'm not just referring to myself, but everybody who's on the screen and so many more who couldn't make it today. To give you background, it was just yesterday morning when I was talking to Michael Sinentsky, who's on the chat, and just talking about let's get to know each other and have you on a future episode. And Michael said, great idea, but actually the first thing we should be doing is helping make sure that the upcoming elections that are happening in the next 2 weeks, that people have more knowledge, that they know what's happening and that they have more of a basis and so on, so that people actually are motivated to vote in this country. And we need to talk about anti-Semitism, and we need to talk about anti-Semitism and Jew hatred in the context of elected officials who affect and create policy and might not always be and have been proven to not often be friends to the Jewish people and to Israel. So here we are gathering, getting this out before Election Day next week. And this is not exclusively, though, election content. This is a conversation about anti-Semitism in America. So I'd like to introduce everybody, and then we're going to get started with a nice conversation. And you might have some people leaving in the middle and some people coming in the middle, and that's totally fine. Okay, first of all, we have Don Samuels. Don Samuels is a Jamaican immigrant and a toy designer who has dedicated his life to living in the most challenged areas of his city to foster positive change. He has served 3 terms on the Minneapolis City Council, 1 on the school board, and is currently running in a congressional rematch against Ilhan Omar. No coincidence why I would possibly want you on this talk. Thank you for being here very much. We have Rabbi Abraham Cooper, the Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, where he addresses human rights issues worldwide. He previously served as chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, monitoring religious freedom violations in 28 countries. And I'm also privileged to say that I've known him my whole life, and I am privileged to have him on this. Thank you, Rabbi, for being here.
My honor.
Next, we have the person who convinced me to make this happen in no time at all, Michael Sinentsky. Michael is a prominent business leader and philanthropist, co-founding Simple Venue, which operates innovative dining concepts such as Sushi by Boo. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he co-founded WeShield to provide essential PPE and safety equipment. I'm a nurse, so I thank you for that. Sinentsky has also led significant philanthropic initiatives, including rebuilding efforts after Superstorm Sandy and supporting Ukraine and Israel. He can also tell us during this about his wonderful organization, IsraelFriends.us. Thank you, Michael, very, very much.
Thank you so much.
We have Emily Austin, who it is an absolute pleasure for me to be able to meet, a TV personality, sports broadcaster from New York, known for her show The Hoop Chat and her work with DAZN as a boxing broadcaster. She has also worked as an MTV anchor, served as a Miss Universe judge, and runs a skincare company called People's Beauty. Emily is a vocal advocate against anti-Semitism and a strong supporter of Israel, having received multiple awards for her efforts. It is a true honor to be able to have you on this, Emily.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
We have Alexander Minn. Alex, who currently you can see with his child, he is the director of strategic engagement for Don Samuels for Congress and a recent magna cum laude graduate of UC Irvine. He gained attention for his activism against anti-Semitism on campus and has been involved in various primary challenges to Ilhan Omar. Alex, truly, thank you for being with us today and adding a real personal touch.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And we have Consuelo Hernandez, but because she literally found out about this 15 minutes ago, and while we were setting up tech, Consuelo came on, and the backstory of Consuelo is that she has a family that is more incredible than I could have possibly imagined. Her brother Daniel Hernandez, who is a proud member of the LGBTQ scene, is also a proud serving member and U.S., I believe, congressman, right? And
Yeah.
you can correct me.
Okay, yeah, he was a former state representative, and my sister Alma Hernandez is a current state representative along with myself. And we both make up like half of the Jewish caucus in the Arizona State Legislature.
Incredible.
And,
so
and
you have him.
Jordan Cope.
You have him, and you have your sister, and you have your sister Alma, who literally helped create the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which I wish the whole country would adopt. And every member of your family just seems more and more incredible, including you. And it is such an honor to have you here, and I can't wait to hear about your efforts, not just your families.
Yeah, thank you for inviting. I appreciate it.
Jordan is here from Stand With Us, and it's fantastic that they were able to get representation, and I was able to get somebody who also shares British parents like I do. So I would like to tell you that Jordan is the Director of Policy Education with Stand With Us, where he works to combat anti-Semitism and the BDS movement. With expertise in Middle Eastern geopolitics and international law, Cope's insights are featured in major media outlets such as Newsweek and Harvard's Journal of Middle Eastern Politics and Policy. And like everybody else, I've just been able to get him in today with Michael's help, and it is fantastic to have you here, Jordan. Thank you very much.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
So all of you coming together have beyond credentials that make me look like a slacker, just as a nurse in a hospital who puts this silly show on. So thank you for all being here. We might get a cameo appearance or a full visit from Shabbos Kestenbaum, but he's speaking tonight. Let's get started now with this chat, because we do have limited time for some of you. I would like to actually start with a pointed question specifically for Don. We're living in a time of unprecedented anti-Semitism. On social media, on the streets. Some of it is violent, all of it is vile. I understand you're operating in the political realm. How do you see your involvement in politics regarding combating anti-Semitism?
Well, thank you for having me on, Boaz, and thank you everyone for sharing this opportunity with me, and I look forward to relationship down the line with all of you. Anti-Semitism is real. Anti-Semitism, like racism, is real. It is not by accident that the folks who were the strongest cohort of allies with the civil rights movement leadership were Jewish people. And it is not by accident then that there's something they have in common, which is the vulnerability of being stigmatized, of being targeted, and attempts made to eliminate or subordinate. And I believe in a strange way that this is also an opportunity and a gift that our two communities have to make a contribution to the transformation of the world, nothing less, because we understand what it means to be vulnerable in a world of prejudice, whether it be anti-Semitism or racism. And in fact, even in my own corner of the world here in North Minneapolis, where Jews and Blacks were prevented from living north of Broadway. And I live now in a home that I was the first Black person in the latter part of the integration process. But south of Broadway, which is just a block from where I live, was the limitation for Jews and Blacks by covenants to live. They went to the same schools, etc. And there are books written and even videos made about the collaboration of Blacks and Jews in defense of each other in face of harassment at school and in the community. And so I believe there's a long tradition. Sandra and I, my wife, live in the most challenged part of the city for a reason. We believe that prejudice is real, but that our presence can make a difference, that we have the power to change things from even from the bottom, which is where the civil rights movement was changed from. And it was because of the experience we had, the passion for change, the commitment, the willingness to sacrifice, because quite frankly, we had less to lose and more to gain. And were able to co-create a system of peaceful resistance that became a paradigm for places like South Africa, for the restoration of Rwanda, and for other countries to follow around the world. And so I believe that acknowledging the reality of anti-Semitism, facing it squarely, not backing down, being proactive in declaring its existence and a commitment to fight it, and being proactive in the effort to create a peaceful and equitable world rather than waiting until a flaring up. And that means constantly emphasizing the need for justice and never letting it go, no matter what your party or your neighbors say. It is that resiliency and that strength of conviction that created the successes of the civil rights movement and every movement that has stood for and achieved justice. So I'm going to Washington with a commitment that anti-Semitism is real and must be eradicated, and that all the decisions we make in Congress, whether it be around a two-state solution that must exclude any group that has sworn the destruction of Israel, it is in those details that we will work out a sustainable future for the Jewish people and set the paradigm for oppressed people all over the world.
I think that's absolutely marvelous. I really appreciate you. The whole concept of being proactive versus reactive, I think, is wonderful. I think that you brought up a point that's not a small point about the Black community, which obviously you personalize, and it's something that needs to be talked about, and maybe we'll even discuss it a bit tonight. I'm actually going to have an episode with the Black community specifically, because we, just like what Robert Kraft has been trying to do, amongst other people, trying to sort of mend those fences and figure out where we went left when we should have gone right, and so on. Consuelo actually wanted to chime in. She's got something personal that she wants to say.
Yeah, Mr. Samuels, I'm so excited to see you on here. I've been following your journey. I am a state rep here in Arizona, but you know, you're in the middle of the last stretch of your campaign, and I just wanted to say thank you for making the time to talk to us. And in a time where politics is so divided, especially I'm a Democrat within my own party, that many candidates have adopted slogans like "for the many, not the money," that a lot of the folks that the person that you're running against have adopted, and very anti-Semitic statements saying that elections are being bought by Jews, that they're also helping spread, that are so dangerous. But that's the reality of our politics today. Whoever's listening, everyone on this call, I think we might know one or two people that can help Don Samuels win his election. I am so excited to have such a strong ally for the Jewish community. You are a public servant that's been in your community. You have an incredible opportunity. We have an incredible opportunity to send someone to Congress that will stand up to anti-Semitism. And the existence of the state of Israel relies on champions like yourself, and you understand it. So whoever's on here listening, like, please ask your friends and family to support Don Samuels. Just here in Arizona, we had an election that hasn't been called yet, but it's done. There was a progressive candidate who was backed by members of the squad, and she lost her election to another progressive candidate, but who was supportive of Israel's right to exist, and did not adopt the hateful statements. Yasemin Ansari, an Iranian candidate, I hope that she can join you once you win your election, but we need to help you. So if anyone can help knock doors, make calls, donate money, please send help to Don Samuels. And no one told me to do this. I'm just so excited to see you here. Thank you.
Very much. I appreciate that. That's a generous gift, and I couldn't have asked it better myself.
It looks like you already have a political ally if you win the election.
Yeah.
Built in. It's like a
Yeah,
survivor alliance, to use it. Well, you know, Consuelo just brought up something. The first time we've heard the word the squad, and it's something that I knew was going to come up tonight because obviously the squad is well known around the country and really the world at this point. And what's the relevance of this conversation? Not merely the anti-Semitism that we're talking about, which the squad has been oft accused of, but specifically the fact that one of those members is Don's competitor. So I'm going to now I have more questions for Don. I have questions for Emily. I have questions for you. But what I would like to ask is all of you, since Consuelo brought that up. How do you see the squad in the overall scheme of things in American politics? I know it's a vague question, but how do you see them? I don't want to lead you to an answer. Rabbi Cooper, were you raising your hand? You should unmute. Unmute, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can make a few comments. Number one, unfortunately, by virtue of what they've been saying, they have been normalizing and mainstreaming anti-Semitism into the body politic, but also into media and social media, et cetera, et cetera. That damage is done every day, sometimes in small pieces and sometimes in massive chunks. And I was at the speech of Bibi Netanyahu at the Congress, and I saw Rashida Tlaib down. She attended and had her show and tell cards of trying to get attention to herself and to demonize the head of the prime minister of the Jewish state. I don't know how. I think Bibi's speech was so powerful and emotive that it kind of, I think, in this case, I think she fell short. But what's interesting also is the comments that she just made on social media today. He was amazingly silent when those 12 Israeli kids, happened to be Druze, were killed by the Iranian-supplied massive rocket that blew, as we say in Yiddish, nebuch, those children literally to smithereens. During the Olympics, right, when they were playing soccer, football in their community in the Golan Heights. She didn't say a word. But when Israel took care of business and eliminated the person in charge of decision-making and everything else linked to that kind of a deployment by Hezbollah, she lambasted, quote unquote, genocidal Israeli officials for killing the Hezbollah commander. And I think this is the other piece that maybe those of us who care for Israel might actually learn something from. I'm not an influencer on social media, but I would imagine it's also true. If you have a product and you have something that you want to push, you use every opportunity, no matter what the venue, in order to state it. Well, when you're talking about the members of the squad, 12 children were butchered, and you would think maybe they would suspend their basic message for an hour, a day, and express some empathy as a parent and solidarity with the suffering of the families, etc. That rarely happens. What you do see here is that staying on message, on the demonization of the blood libels against the state of Israel and Zionists in general and the Jewish people, day in and day out. And you just see it today where you're attacking genocidal Israelis who are now hunkering down and wondering whether or not the decisions made in Tehran and Beirut are going to decimate southern Lebanon and northern Israel. So I think anything that can be done by people like Don Samuels, fellow Americans who are, are going and trying to work through the system to remove people like that. One of the main reasons that has to take place is that, unfortunately, the Democratic national leadership, which had many, many opportunities to sort of put these people in their place and say, you got elected, you're supposed to represent everyone, not just a narrow constituency. You're supposed to behave in a certain way. The signal from, unfortunately, the people at the top of the Democratic hierarchy in Congress was, go ahead and do your thing. You're the next generation, and there literally no limits. The only way to put limits on that kind of hatred is to be able to rely on our neighbors, like Mr. Samuels, who comes forward with his own history and his own, worldview, and to draw a line in the sand. That's really, I think, American democracy at its best.
That's fantastic. I'm sure Don appreciates hearing that. I certainly do.
Thank you.
Do you, correct me if I'm wrong, Don, but isn't this one of the types of elections where everybody can vote for you, whether they're a registered Democrat, Independent, or Republican?
We have an open primary, and anybody can vote in that primary. And it's a great opportunity for people to become, to vote for me and to vote for the person they want, and not to sit on the sidelines.
I think that's wonderful that that's an option. I honestly, I don't know much about politics. I will plead ignorance, but I kind of wish that the default uniforms across the country would always let people be able to do that. I personally live in California, and every time an election comes, I encourage other people that if they care more about the other party's candidate, they should change their party affiliation so they can vote in that primary. So I, over the years, have waffled back and forth between Democrat and Republican just so I could vote in the primary that matters to me more. And it's kind of annoying. And I'm jealous of your I don't know if it's your district or your state, but
The state, yeah.
state. Okay. It seems like a good policy.
Yeah.
There's so much to talk about here, and we're going to go through quite a lot of it. And no matter what we do, we'll just skim the surface. But I actually want to know, I want to know from Jordan, because Jordan here with Stand With Us, I know that Stand With Us has a huge presence when it comes to college students and universities and what's happening there. I mean, one of the most important organizations protecting Jews on these campuses and looking out for people. Can you tell us in your take, and I certainly don't mind at any given point for people to interrupt each other, feel free to have a conversation, but Jordan, how do we prevent the current anti-Semites who, if you want to be kind and just say anti-Zionists on college campuses of today, how do we prevent them from being the future Squad 2.0?
I think it's important to realize that politics are impacted at many different levels. And one of the biggest levels actually influencing college campuses today is what students see on social media. And unfortunately, when it comes to a lot of social media outlets that students are accessing, some of them happen to be state-sponsored, like Al Jazeera Plus, AJ Plus, which definitely resonates with many within the progressive crowd on campuses. But AJ Plus, Qatari state-sponsored by a government that itself has given approximately $1.8 billion to Hamas since 2012. AJ Plus is not the only state-sponsored media outlet that is influencing anti-Israel sentiment on campus. You have TRT, which is a Turkish state-sponsored media. So how do we impact students? It's very important to cultivate student leaders before and when they go into college. Students need to be equipped with the facts, and that's what Stand With Us does with their fellowships. But it's also important that when students decide to cross the law and to engage in illegal activities, that there are laws on the books that are either implemented that already exist, ensuring enforcement. And if there isn't that enforcement, it's important to equip officials with the proper knowledge as to when anti-Semitism surfaces, and importantly, when an illegal act is committed with that anti-Semitic motive. And part of the work that I do at Stand With Us, and as mentioned earlier, what Consuelo did in Arizona, is that we try to codify the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is a very important gold standard definition of anti-Semitism that contains 11 examples of classical and contemporary manifestations. And this is important because anti-Semitism has evolved over time. So it's very important to be able to identify it in its common iteration and ensure under law that law enforcement can better identify anti-Semitic motive and therefore prosecute it. And on top of that, for university and state officials to better address anti-Semitic acts such as harassment and discrimination. And so there's so many different ways to combat anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is motivated through misinformation inherently. And so we must stop it at the source. But when we can't stop it at the source, we must stop it through the law. We must raise awareness to what it is for law enforcement officials, for education officials. And we must also do our best to promote what is the truth at the end of the day. With anti-Semitic incidents having skyrocketed approximately 400% since October 7th, when comparing similar intervals this year and last year, silence is no longer an option, and we have to correct anti-Semitism and misinformation wherever we see it.
I'm just wondering for the people on this chat who would be able to really answer this, which is probably, honestly, most of you, Rabbi Cooper, Consuelo, you, Don, how realistic is it for us to actually see this country fully adopt the IHRA definition? I mean, every day it's like 4 months later, this state and this district gets it, and then this governor wants to adopt it. Is there any reality where just the United States adopts it, period, end of story?
You know, there's an instinct about anti-Semitism because it's so horrendous that you wish there was like, gee, is there one cure-all that we could sort of be able to move on? And that's just not simply not the reality. It is frustrating to have to go, if you will, district by district, city by city, council by council. I actually think at the end of the day, that's a positive thing, because the way in which the United States is evolving or devolving as a society, more and more the most important decisions that affect our kids, our lives, the quality of our lives, are being made by city councils, by school boards, et cetera, and a lot of important decisions about our societies are made on the state level. So even if, and it'll be nice if Congress would pass it, it's really, IHRA definition is a starting point. It's a baseline for police officers to know when a line has been crossed. It's extremely important, but it is not the end all and be all. It's the start of the counterattack. It's not the end.
Interesting. If any of you ever want to chime in and say something, please do, by the way, before I continue.
There were some things. So I also serve on the board of Hillel at the University of Arizona and the board of my congregation. But my sister and I, Representative Omar Hernandez, have been meeting with students at the state capitol and their parents to listen to the concerns post October 7th. I think, we passed IHRA in Arizona in 2022, but as Jordan mentioned, Rabbi Cooper mentioned, things have really changed. And it's really important that at the state level, we can work on making sure that we update as needed. Hopefully other states will adopt it. But something else that we were able to do, two things. One, I think in order to help combat anti-Semitism, there also needs to be mandatory Holocaust education, which we were able to pass in Arizona. My sister, Representative Alma, and I were able to secure $7 million to open the first Holocaust education center that will be free for anyone. It hopefully shovel ready will start. The process of building will start in about a year, next summer. So that's part of the combating anti-Semitism. And on college campuses, something that we were able to do here is we passed a law that for the student fees that are collected from the universities, if the students, Jewish students or any student wants to opt out of the fees, they can, because all the fees basically are put in a pot every state is different, but here in Arizona, they were put in a pot. So even if there was SJP on campus, the Students for Justice in Palestine, they post October 7th, they were celebrating the following day on college campuses here in Arizona and across the country. And we saw how in Columbia and in the California UCs, things were pretty escalated, and the university officials did not act. And that's something that can be fixed at the state level. You put enough pressure, either through a law or have them change their policies through the board that oversees the universities. So that's something that we worked on, but I think it's not like a one size fits all. I think like at the federal level, there could be enough members, hopefully, that can adopt something nationwide. And having champions like Don Samuels, I have no doubt about it that he will make sure that he's communicating and advocating for the Jewish people and
Nope.
and pushing against the rhetoric. I think is the most important thing. Is like it was mentioned, social media plays a big role in influencing people. And when you have such a big reach, even if the squad it's not a lot and they're losing members, and I feel confident that we'll continue to lose members. But we need to make sure that we have people in office, whatever party it is, like Don Samuels, Democrats especially, that will push back against the rhetoric, because it is very dangerous. I feel like post October 7th, political events definitely have changed here in Arizona, where myself and people like my sister, who make up half of the Jewish caucus, don't really feel safe to disclose where we're going to have events. And politics really changed for those of us who are pro-Israel, who own the being Zionist as well. It's a very dirty word nowadays, according to social media. But yeah, it's very dangerous. So we need to have good people in there.
Yeah.
So I just want to piggyback on a couple of things that Representative Hernandez brought up. And I just also want to thank Jordan for making time to be here today. I myself, as a recent graduate of the University of California, Irvine, came face to face not only with the calamity that is the lack of education on campus and the silencing of our educators. They fired a member of Hillel board, a renowned educator, Professor Levine. There also is a real problem with the administration and the way in which administrators go about selectively enforcing rules for Jewish students, because there's always different rules that apply for us, just Jews, than they do for other students, whether it's those that are actively creating a atmosphere of chaos and, in many cases, terror, or those that are actively destroying property. I myself was accused by university administrators, by the dean of students. This is a situation where Stand With Us had to come in and provide legal services for me to ensure that I was going to be able to get my diploma and graduate. And so I think it is a two-pronged approach, and we need to talk about the most effective ways, both with working with legislators, both with working with educators, but also accountability for people who find themselves in these positions, waiting with their position of power for that moment for their anti-Semitism to be in their policy, in their decision-making. And there's a number of congressional leaders out there who have made it their mission to be holding academics and institutions accountable for a variety of causes. We can hold Liz Stefanik as someone who held up academic educators accountable for their actions during, many, and there was action that resulted from those hearings. The administrators at Harvard and the administrators at Penn University had to resign because of their ignorance. And so I think the more open-minded people like Dawn, like maybe someday Representative Hernandez, can find places in Congress to open dialogue, to open the doors for education, punish the people that are unwilling to be in an educational environment with an open mind. That's how I think another approach to combating anti-Semitism. And it's also something that we can all be a part of as well.
I love how many of you are connected to each other in cool little ways. It's a sort of Jewish geography and not Jewish geography, and it's wonderful. There are so many things we've talked about that we could each separately only speak about for 2 hours. But I want us to take a little bit of a left turn right now because Emily Austin is with us and it's unbelievable to have her here, and she only has about another 15-20 minutes. So I want to actually start to focus some energy on making sure that we get to talk to you, Emily. So thank you for being a part of this. I want to just jump right in. You are a very prominent person. You are known to millions of people. It's not an exaggeration. And you don't hide the fact that you're Jewish, nor the fact that your parents are from Israel. You don't even hide the fact that you care about Jewish values, traditions. You're proud about all of it. It's not something we can say for everybody who's in the public eye. Has there been blowback to the fact that you're a Jewish, and how have you handled that blowback, if so?
Oof. Of course, unfortunately, there has been blowback. None of it deterring in any way. I'm sure everyone can relate to that. But this anti-Semitism, which has lost its weight, I feel, so I just call it Jew hatred now, thanks to Brooke Goldstein, goes long before October 7th. And, just to add context, I'm 23 years old. So the fact that I can say I've been experiencing anti-Semitism for many years is sad. But it starts as soon as I got my platform is when I noticed it, because I grew up very sheltered. I grew up in a Jewish community in Long Island in a private school and had never really interacted with non-Jewish people extensively until I got to college. And by the time I got to college, I started growing my online presence and my Instagram platform. And the first instance I remember of anti-Zionism was me posting a cupcake on Yom HaAtzmaut, which I proudly celebrate every year. It's Israel's Independence Day. And the reaction from my then maybe under 50,000 followers online was appalling. I mean, my favorite NBA player, swiped up on my Instagram story and said, "I can't believe you're a pro-Israel person." And I actually was so innocent then that I thought he meant it in a complimentary way. And I wrote, right, ha, 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 like thinking, wow, everyone's starting to know I'm Jewish and I'm a Zionist. And he wrote, "Not a flex," meaning not a good thing, not something to be proud of. And that was very confusing to me at the time, being maybe a freshman in college. I was like, what do you mean? Like, my favorite NBA player now is criticizing me for being pro-Israel. And again, pre-October 7th, everything's now amplified times 100. Now, since the war, I'd argue even more so, the pushback has been very deterring, meaning I lost all my jobs. I was unemployed for 7 months. I didn't make a penny. I was sponsored by Puma, and Puma had boycotted Israel. So, of course, morally, I couldn't work for them. So I quit and I cut off ties with them. Miss Universe is an organization where I was the youngest judge in history to represent the organization, meaning in the entire globe, they chose me to reflect my values into who should be Miss Universe so that they can be given the voice. And after the 7th, I asked the CEO if she can condemn the atrocities of specifically the sexual violence of October 7th, in which I was ignored. And then I wrote to her, "Your silence is deafening." And she wrote to me a very long paragraph explaining how, due to the contestants we have in Miss Universe, we avoid politics for everyone's safety. Now, keep in mind, Israel was not even included in the competition last year. And secondly, they condemned Russia, rightfully so, when they invaded Ukraine. So now you have selective outrage. So I specifically wrote, condemn the rape. You don't need to talk about Israel or Palestine. Condemn rape. And I was ignored again. So I went on Fox News and I blasted them, and then they fired me too. But they deserve to be blasted because you're selective outrage, selective women's rights activist, and your hypocrisy should be called out. But too many instances like this, unfortunately, just led me to being unemployable until this boxing job came along, which actually was my dream job. So one door shuts, another door opens. But I think the hardest part about it is that everyone looks at us advocates in a very glorified way. And we often receive compliments. We appreciate your bravery and this and that. But the truth is, it's a very somber feeling to go to sleep at night knowing that we have to do this. Like, I'll give you a short example. I work now a lot in the Middle East for boxing. And it was a huge shock to everyone because this was tucked in most of the time. And I started hearing really negative talk about Jewish people. So I tucked it out, untucked it. And suddenly everyone goes quiet and goes, we like you, we don't like your people. And that broke my heart, in which I delivered a very heroic speech how I am my people. So if you like me, you like them. And if you don't like them, you can't like me. And like, it's kind of a package deal. But the truth is, it's been, forget my personal loss, it's just been very disheartening to see that my people have to be hated because we've been dehumanized, which happened in the Holocaust. And I'm glad that, unfortunately, October 7th was a huge slap in the face for all of the cultural Jews who didn't feel it was their obligation to speak out because they didn't see it as a threat. Now we're all very aware. So at this point, if you choose to remain silent, you just don't care about your identity or yourself, or maybe you hate yourself, and that's why you're staying silent. But it's been hard for everyone, not just myself.
Emily, could I jump in? I think I'm the
course.
oldest guy here anyway. I want to say two things. You said some very, very important things. That's important, especially for the younger people who are going to be hearing your statement. And to the people who work in this field and trying to turn things around, when you stand up against anti-Semitism, there will be a price to pay. Hopefully it won't be too harsh, but it is a wake-up call for people who were born and bred in this greatest democracy in the world. The current situation is that when you stand up for being a Jew, you're very likely to pay a price, and not only on the university campus, but in the medical field, sometimes in the business communities. We have a lot of catching up to do, I think, with our own self-awareness. But I want to make one other comment because I'm probably, I think, maybe the only other person on tonight who's been to Saudi Arabia. I'm the famous or infamous Kippah Gate man, the guy who came to Saudi Arabia as the head of the U.S. Commission on International Religion and left 30 hours after I arrived when they told me to take off my kippah. And I said, no, thank you, I won't. I left the country. Let me say something about our Arab country, our cousins. I'm not an expert, but I've had a lot of experience in that part of the world. You know, they will respect you more when you show your Star of David. It may be rocky. Some people might go off, but the truth is, it's kind of a test. We're dealing with fellow Semites for whom respect is oxygen. It means so much to people living that part of the world. And the fact that you stand up for who you are in that part of the world, it may sound counterintuitive. I think in the long run means that you'll be respected and probably have more meaningful relationships there in the long run than you would if you take the easy way out. In your case, a Star of David or a crucifix or a balding old man like me will take off his kippah. There'll be uncomfortable moments, but for them, since respect means so much in their culture, teaching people that respect is a two-way street is something they can relate to. So, as we say in Chinese, kol hakavod to you.
I want to just also add to your point, specifically about Riyadh. Obviously, as an Israeli citizen, everyone told me not to go. When I say everyone, I literally mean my parents, politicians, diplomats, and every rational human being. But being in Riyadh, first of all, as a female, but as a Jewish person, was the most eye-opening experience for me. Because like you said, I didn't go in there thinking I had to hide my identity. In fact, I was like, worst comes to worst, I'd die a hero. But let me tell you, I had the complete opposite experience as to what I was expecting. I was at a dinner table as the only female and the only Jew, and probably the only Zionist. And what that did for me was allow opportunity for debate. And here's what I feel like Americans are lacking today is debate. and respectful debate, not violent protests, but dialogue. And although many of us walked away from the table still disagreeing, many people with their minds changed, we had these really uncomfortable conversations, like very, kind of hostile, but trying to, walk the path of respect. And we, at the end of the day, went to dinner after, saw each other the next day. We worked together, we're colleagues. I'm here in LA with the Saudis. They're wearing, their head covers, and I'm wearing my Star of David, and we're like fist bumping each other. And I feel like the problem today is that people lost their willingness to speak to you if you disagree. Like it's funny, I mean, we disagree politically, a lot of us here, but like I was at the RNC to go support Donald Trump, and there was a protest, obviously, against Israel. And when I went to go speak to the protesters, there was this one woman who was a queer for Palestine, and I told her how she would be thrown off a roof in Palestine. And when a protester overheard our conversation and saw that she was starting to become more centrist, he came over and said, "Don't talk to the Jews, not the Zionists, the Jews, because they're spewing lies and they're feeding you misinformation," when in fact I was speaking the truth and they were being lied to. And they say, "Close your ears, don't listen to them," almost like a child in preschool. So when you lose your willingness to hear opinions that you disagree with, you're doomed. And that's something that I did not experience there. And I was so happy to come back to the US and show them, like, you say we're hated, you say we have no allies and friends, but here's what I experienced. And it almost gives us that sense of hope that we tend to lose, because it feels like sometimes the whole world is against us.
I just want to chime in a little bit and state my admiration for you, Emily, for making a stand at an age when people try to fit in and to belong.
Thank you.
You're at that stage of your life, and how incredibly you were able to vault over that. And a level of consciousness is incredible. And what it does also show for you so early is that the rewards of taking a stand and then building new alliances based on your values rather than some other form of identity is what brought you into this circle here. There are people out there who will come around us whenever we declare ourselves and compensate for the price we pay and the loss of relationships and favor. You get a different job, you get a new parent, almost new siblings, you get new cousins, get new supporters and allies and friends. So it's such a pleasure to see you taking that risk and demonstrating that reality.
Thank you. And right back at you, literally.
I want to chime in and just hearing, someone who's not from the tribe, Don, the other Don, Emily, that's here, not the Don at the RNC, but this Don over here, just to hear someone not from the tribe talk so eloquently about, what he has gone through, what we are going through right now. It's like what Emily just said. This is exactly where things get fixed. And Don, I don't know you that well. Just just to hear your thoughts on this, it's a special thing to see someone being a leader, and standing up for what's right, and knowing that being a leader is not creating followers; it's creating more leaders. And you, just hearing you talk, it's very inspiring, and I just want to say thank you for standing on the right side of history.
Yeah, it's really just wonderful. What this makes me think of when I see, as Emily said, we have Republicans on this chat, we have Democrats on this chat, we have confused people like me who switch parties every other minute on this chat, and feel politically homeless. And what it really makes me sad about is when I read a recent obituary about Joseph Lieberman. I don't know if any of you guys caught this fact, but there was this amazing story that he was supposed to be the original running mate with John McCain. They were supposed to go. It was all going to happen, and it was going to be a historic unity ticket. And I don't know what would have happened, but I sure as hell would have voted for that ticket. And Instead, you know, the political maneuverings and game happened, and we know how that went with, you know, the lady who saw Russian from her kitchen. And it's just sad that we never got that. And I wonder if I have to assume, honestly, I'm 45 years old. I don't think I'm going to live to see a unity ticket happen in the highest office. And I think that's really sad, because if everybody wants to keep saying that what they care about the most is just healing this country, then I don't know a better way than to take a moderate in one party and a moderate in another, and just putting them damn well together and just saying, we're going to work on moving together forward, instead of having these, I'm sorry, but idiots on the very, very left and the idiots on the very, very right, who, like Emily said, this is how they listen to debate, or they listen to debate by screaming at each other. You know, it's a term that I actually coined back in October when I wrote my first article. And I said that the problem with today is that everybody now has a form of ignorance that's called radicalized ignorance. That's what it is now. It used to be that we would just know what we didn't know and we accepted it. If somebody asked you to talk about, you know, evolution, and you just didn't do well in science class, you shut the hell up. But now if somebody talks about it, you're going to tell them they're an idiot and their whole family are idiots, and you don't want to know them. Everybody low blows each other. And it's very sad, because the state of political discourse is basically come down to people writing nasty comments online, and worse, screaming in front of you. So all of you are not the people we're talking about. And what I like to tell myself, and I hope that you think this is correct, but I'd like to tell myself that the silent majority are like us. I hope that's true. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts on America and the world right now? Are the silent majority like us, or the silent majority radicalized ignorant on the left and right?
Boaz, before everyone answers, I have to run, but I want to thank everyone for being here. Like, each and every single one of you in your own way are playing your part to the highest extent. And I'd love to connect with you all offline, which I'm sure Michael and Boaz will make happen. Please continue this conversation. I hope the entire world hears this. So many different figures from different demographics. It's just very healing. I don't want to interrupt, so goodbye, everyone.
Oh,
Emily, thank
you're
you.
23. We need to be telling you what to do, not
Yeah.
the other way.
Bye, Michael.
You well.
Bye.
It was a pleasure to have her on, and thank you, Mike.
How the hell is she only 23?
I know, that's absolute insanity. Amazing to have her on and to have all of you on. Okay, everybody else who's on here, I believe is on the same time frame the rest of the way. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts the rest of the way, Jordan? I think you wanted to say something.
Please, if we're going to talk about the silent majority, I think when we look at municipalities nationwide and what's going on with legislation over there, I think that's a key symbol of helping us understand really what's going on. There's been a proliferation of ceasefire resolutions. There's been so much noise. But when a recent poll came out by The Hill, it actually showed that approximately 80% of Americans support Israel in the recent war versus Hamas. And we see all this news about the proliferation of ceasefire resolutions by what I call resolutionaries, making their voices heard throughout the nation. There's been about 150 or so that have passed. But when you look at the overall big picture, there's about 36,000 municipalities in America. I do think America at large does support Israel. And at the end of the day, only one state legislature has passed a ceasefire resolution. So we keep on hearing all of this noise, anti-Israel activism, left, right, and center. But I do think that there is a strong silent majority that still exists on both the Democrat and Republican parties. And I do think that there is very strong pro-Israel support. Sometimes we need to count the glass as half full instead of half empty. And we need to find our allies wherever they may be, whatever on which side of the political aisle. But our allies do exist, and we need to encourage them to come out and to manifest the pro-Israel sentiment and the truth that they represent.
Rabbi Cooper, you were waiting to say something?
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I had a chance to know and work with the late great Simon Wiesenthal for 29 years. I learned a lot from him. He was, as you know, first a victim in the Holocaust. He was trained as a architect before the war, and he wasn't trained to be a Nazi hunter. He just did it. He really never left the Holocaust, if you will. One of the things that he told me was that besides the horrible suffering, the worst feeling was during the Shoah of a sense of total abandonment, that nobody really cared, that basically they were as good as dead already by what happened. And he said that going forward after World War II and the Nazi Holocaust, that the Jewish people needed to do a better job in forging new alliances and in finding friends and in making friends. And frankly, we haven't done a very good job at it. And the analysis that you just gave, about the political end of thing and Israel support is extremely important and well taken. But I'm looking at it from a slightly different point of view. It's on us, the Jewish community, to reach out to our neighbors, to explain to them why we care about Israel. I mean, why does a Jew in Toronto care about a Jew in Tel Aviv? I mean, for most people, they just don't follow this. And when I think one of the important ways we can connect, especially in the urban areas around the United States, is we have to meet the local pastor. Not everybody should do it. Maybe you select whatever working group you have. You have to find out what our neighbors are thinking. I don't know about Minnesota, but here in California, the homeless situation out of control. Poverty strikes really profoundly, and even hunger. So I wouldn't say before, but along with expressing our concerns over political issues and Israel, which are dear to our heart, of course, is we have to make common cause with our neighbors. The Torah teaches us we have to, care about the poor. We have to try to help people who are helpless. And I think if we don't wait always to crisis moments where we want to do an immediate litmus test, well, you're for us or against us. And I think a lot of our neighbors are saying, but who are you? I mean, you're nice enough. We all put up our garbage Thursday night, but we have to do more, especially in including identifying Jews and identifying Zionists within our neighborhoods and communities, to get to know our neighbors and to be able to project what our values are. And I think here we'll come back full circle to what you just said. Most of our values are universally felt values, freedom of religion, etc. They're American values as well, not all, but most. And I think that's a great basis for us to create relationships. It doesn't mean you're always going to agree, as we heard from a previous speaker, but when you have a basis of a relationship, when you deconstruct the stereotypes that are being pushed on social media and by anti-Semites, all Jews are rich, they don't care, they're underhanded, blah, 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 blah. When you have a relationship with someone and you work together at a food bank, or you're doing something together for the betterment of the entire community, that is the best, I think, defense against the tsunami of hate and anti-Semitism that we're feeling. And I would just add one other thing. It's not just against the Jews. Since the early 1990s, when the FBI has been taking stats, every single year, the number one target of hate crimes in America are Black, and the number two target of hate crimes in America, with the exception of the 3 months after 9/11, are Jews. As far as I know, neither of us would like to be at the head of that list, but we are. So we need to, of course, find people we can do common good with, share what our concerns are, and then good things are going to happen for everyone. Stay home and wait for someone else to take care of your problems. Write a check to a Jewish group and that'll somehow take care of it. Those days are long gone. We're all on the front lines today.
Yeah, I want Michael, I want to come to you in next. And I just want to just compliment what you're saying, Rabbi Cooper, which is that it really is all about personalization and getting to know each other. You know, I used an analogy recently in a previous episode, which is that we've all had that experience hundreds and thousands of times when we're driving that nobody lets you into the lane. But the second that you make eye contact with that driver, they let you into the lane. People have a way of shutting each other out and dehumanizing each other but the second you actually are a person to them, everything is different in terms of the interaction, right? We all find that. In my hospital, lahavdil, but in my hospital, I work on my unit. I wear a kippah all the time. I'm the one nurse in my Catholic hospital that wears a kippah that's over there. And I can tell you since October 7th and before that, that my unit knows that I'm Jewish, obviously. They also know I'm pretty loud and proud about my caring about Israel. And on my unit, I've had no incidents with any coworkers, and I've had no back talk said to me or anything like that. I know that on other units, when there's nobody wearing a kippah and nobody talking about it, there's literally entire chats where they're going to ceasefire things and talking about dehumanizing Israel and won't even say a bad word about Hamas. My unit's the biggest in the hospital. Proportionally and statistically, there should be people doing that, but there aren't. Now, sure, there might be one or two I just don't know about. Sure. But the bigger point I'm making is I'm a person to them. They know me. I'm Boaz. I'm that guy who's been working with them. I help them clean patients who, you know, have no dignity at that moment, right? I'm helping them, they're helping me. And they realize as a personal thing to me, it's a lot harder for them now to offend me and my family. So there's no easy solution to this because we're not going to suddenly be like, we're not going to suddenly be like tribbles, if you know the Star Trek reference. We're not going to just suddenly populate the entire globe and suddenly like be everywhere. We're still going to be only 0.2% of the world's population and 2% of the US population. I hope I got the stats right, Rabbi. But at the end of the day, those of us who are there, which is everybody on this chat, including Don, who make noise and personalize us, show people that we exist and we matter. Each one of us has the power to make an exponential number of other people care about us as humans. So I just wanted to say I really appreciated that entire conversation that Jordan and Rabbi Cooper just had. Michael, I'm sorry for interrupting you. I'd really like to talk.
Based on what the rabbi was saying, how we have to get out there. My question is, as one of the co-founders of IsraelFriends.us, where we try to help fight anti-Semitism as well as support our democratic, free-loving ally of Israel, it just feels like one step forward, 6 steps back. And what I mean there is like, we are getting out there. We are trying to help others. We are trying to make people understand that TikTok is not the right place to have an education. But then, it's you have all these huge forces behind the scenes, just funneling so much money into what's happening here. Just who is behind all this money, and it's just very overwhelming for someone who's trying to do the right thing and show people proper leadership, but then you're getting hit from so many places with humongous entities that have been operating secretly for decades. Qatar in our colleges, and you have these organizations like the DSA who the day of October 7th, they were applauding, they were showing hang gliders, they were the paragliders, they were just saying, the most dastardly things, and how do we collectively attack that and stop that? Because for all of our goodwill, we're so outnumbered. It's 16 million people, 15 million people around the whole world. How do you stop that?
I think Don wanted to chime in. Please, that's a great question that you're asking, Michael. Don, you're going to have to unmute.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I just had a couple of thoughts. One is my wife and I are a little bit obsessed with the Holocaust. We understand the connection there with what African Americans have gone through. And one of the things that has struck us is that there are movies. We certainly do more from movies than books, but there are movies. By the way, we've watched a lot of Shoah, which goes on forever. But there are movies that tell of towns and cities or villages where that whole community acted differently than their countrymen, and harbored Jews, saved Jews, in almost uniformly. And at the same time, also in the African American experience, you know about the having a senior moment, the Underground Railroad. I think you know about the Underground Railroad, and that there is a particular denomination that was meaning the Quakers, who were most prominent in the Underground Railroad. And what I don't understand is, given the prominence of and the peculiarity of those kinds of things, why isn't research done to find out what happened in that town for the years leading up to the Holocaust that made that community act so differently from, it can't just be by accident. Something happened in that town theologically, sociologically, whatever, that made the difference. Something happens in the Quaker religion that makes the religion the difference. And I'm curious about that. And I can't identify it, and I don't know if any research has been done. The other thing I wanted to say is that I find that most people in that silent majority, that frustrated majority, are out of touch with their potential and need a call to service, or a challenge, or an invitation, or a mission to become leaders. And I tell you why I say that. There are so many things in my own life. I remember I was complaining to a friend of leadership issues about 30 years ago. And she said to me, "So what are you going to do about it?" To help people to understand that when you are a little bit obsessed about injustice, it is actually something is calling you. You are being called. And that those feelings that you have, and we can tell that to our children, that your urge for justice, and our young people, your passion around seeing people being taken advantage of, is a call for your intervention, for your work, you to do something. It is not simply an emotional reaction. It's a moral, cosmic, if you want to put it that way, or a spiritual call to you to step up in some kind of leadership, and in some kind of a proactivity in making change. And I've seen that in my community. I think that's part of a great political strategy, to when we find someone who's saying, you know, boy, I'm really disturbed about what's happening in Israel. I'm glad you're taking a stand. I used to feel like, hey, you're glad I'm taking a stand? You better take a stand. And instead, I now know that I can make it a call to say, you have just called yourself. Something in you has called you. Why don't you take some literature, knock on your neighbor's door, and turn that passion, that urge into action, and do something. And I believe that the silent majority is a sleeping population of sleeping giants, and we can inspire them to get up, rise up, and do what those little towns and the Quakers did, and turn their idealism into leadership and service.
Don, you're amazing. Your speech, you could be one of those people, it's a general that leads people into war. It's an extremely inspiring speech. Makes me wish I was able to commit a little bit of voter fraud and vote for you for this election, but don't worry, I'm doing that. I really will. But anyway, I actually want to pivot over to Alex, because Alex, I want to hear, but you have kind of a cool story that I believe ties into some experience at UC Irvine that you could tell us about. And I would really like to know that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I also just want to say, having known Dawn my entire life, I've known that these are not just things that he's feeling in the moment. These are deep, passionate convictions that he has, his true North Star, as he talks about. And he's inspired me, and I felt like I was channeling my inner Dawn by attending this rally with intent to be there. And this rally that I'm talking about that I was attending was an encampment, an illegal encampment at the University of California, Irvine, to support divestment, boycott of the University of California system from any investments in the state of Israel, any student abroad programs of the state of Israel, or any education programs related to the state of Israel. And so myself and another classmate had said, we're just going to go peacefully show our peaceful opposition to this. We're going to let them know that we are present and that they are not stopping us, because that's what, Dawn has modeled as an effective way to build a coalition against things that are in the wrong side of history. And that's how you bring history around to the right side, by showing where things are in the wrong so you can bring them to the right. So that was the goal of what I was doing, attending the encampment. I didn't go to the encampment trying to hurt people, trying to get involved in any sort of issue. But I went there, and as my classmate will tell you, he had right before the incident happened, he had told me we should go back to class because we had about 10 minutes to go to class. So on our way leaving the encampment, this is not the first time we showed up, or frankly, it wasn't the last time either, but we had been there at this point for 10 minutes. And it wasn't even something that I had really considered, but I was wearing a JCC shirt with a little Jewish Magen David on the side. And so I didn't even know that people had identified me, but the actual school reports, and we'll get into the school reports, but it identified that the school law enforcement had been following us because they had thought that I was a security concern because I was wearing a Magen David shirt. Anyway, so I'm, as many of us do, walking while I'm looking at my phone, and I'm actually working on stuff for the campaign. And I look up from an email, and right in front of my face is a sign that says, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," with a picture of a man in very stereotypical Jewish attire with a dagger held over the Palestinian flag, with blood flowing from the Jewish Israeli flag to the Palestinian flag. And this is within 6 inches to my face. I mean, I looked up and it's right there. And I, as you would swat a fly, I swatted this sign away from me. And there was a little bit of tape that got from the four pieces of painter tape that had been illegally put on this sign, that was illegally plastered against an illegal pallet that was there where it wasn't. Anyway, so the tape got stuck on my hand. Within about 30 seconds of that, school law enforcement from the University of California, Irvine had detained me. And I'll just tell you, I have the entire thing recorded. And that's why Stand With Us was able to be a legal advocate for me. That's why the Washington Examiner is, that's why I understood the importance of having my civil rights protected. But for all the students out there that don't, this is what's concerning. There are many institutions that trample students that didn't know to do this to protect themselves. But so the university immediately, these cops immediately tried to detain me in front of about 100 people. Immediately, the crowd of encampment people go nuts. They pull their phones out, and he's like, "What's your name?" What's your name? And they're literally trying to dox me and ruin my entire life. No concern for my safety or my well-being, because of course I'm less than human. I'm Jewish. And I refused. I said, guys, why don't we move about 100 feet to the left out of privacy, and I might be willing to, answer some of your questions. So they did that. They did not create a security perimeter, and every 5 seconds, masked vigilante protesters are walking by to see what they're doing to me. And they accused me, and they charged me with theft, attempted conversion, and they placed a hold on my ability to graduate from the University of California, Irvine. They attempted to arrest me. They detained me for 45 minutes. I have the entire thing recorded. It required the dean of students to come out. I have a recording of him explaining that this was just standard policy. And as this thing proceeded, I received a letter from the University of California detailing that I would be required to write a 1,250-page essay admitting my guilt, violating my civil rights, and declaring my contrition for the event if I was expecting to graduate. At this point, Stand With Us stepped in and arbitrated a appeal where I was able to graduate, and they they have still maintained that I have a warning on my record for theft, conversion, and stealing. It says stealing this illegal sign that said "From the river to the sea." And the attorney at Stand With Us is continuing to pursue. We're pursuing Title VIII litigation, Title VIII complaints, civil rights lawsuit violations on the basic principle of why are you pursuing this when you let entire protests occur illegally? Why they storm buildings illegally, damage property illegally, desecrated campus property throughout the portion of the semester and quarter. And if for no other reason than, well, he should have known the student handbook. Well, why should he know the student handbook when the others should not? Is it because he's Jewish?
Yeah, the double standard is beyond glaring. It's really cool that your story times into Stand With Us. It's not like I connected it on purpose. So that's very, very cool. So they help so many students with, you're talking about Title VIII. I know they talk about Title VI all the time. It's pretty fantastic. Do you have any?
The Title VI and the Title VIII. It might be Title VI. I apologize for that.
It might have been, but I'm not a legal expert. Did you have anything that you wanted to show us though? That I know that you brought something, or Michael brought something. Was it related to this?
So I have a bunch of different stuff. I can show you the sanction letter.
Consuelo, go ahead and tell us.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Alexander, I'm so glad you're part of Dawn's campaign. And thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for Stand With Us for jumping in and helping. There's a lot of students that feel very unsafe and don't have that type of support. So I unfortunately have to go, but best of luck to Don Samuels. Please, everyone, if you can throw anything his way, phone calls, canvassing if you're there in person, but if you're not, anyone can donate. I don't know your website, but I'm pretty sure you guys can figure it out. Thank you, everyone. And I'm happy to connect with anyone offline. Thank you, everyone.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you for your time,
Bye.
especially so last minute.
I do have a question for Stand With Us and the rabbi, and maybe Don can chime in on this. How did the fringe, how did the extremists on both the left and the right infiltrate US politics and get elected? Like, as an example, the Squad on the left, or Marjorie Taylor Greene, or Massey on the right. How did this happen? And how can we make sure we don't allow this to happen anymore? Because hate has no place, left, right, we're all humans. So there's no party affiliation that should allow, hate to be okay in your party. So how do we, how did this happen, and how do we avoid this going forward?
Well, I would say that remind everyone that democracy is a participation sport. And whether we're talking about the Muslim Brotherhood and other groups, they're in this for the long run. You talk about Qatar, they've invested what, $7-8 billion over a 20-year period targeting elite university. It's almost like a military operation. But there are also folks that are in the State Department, that are in different at universities, etc., that have very radical views, which they never hid, and took no shortcuts in getting to their station of where they're. I'm not talking about politicians, a slightly different thing, but America is an open society, and if you're ready to play by the rules to, reach a certain station in life where you can influence things, it's wide open. So whether, we've seen stuff in the Chicago area, right, with school boards, right, or city councils or county councils in areas, and you suddenly see people who are bringing up the Middle East when you're talking, like, what does it have to do with anything? The answer is that these are folks with commitments of a different worldview than ours, who invested their time and their efforts to work the system. And that those doors are still open to all of us. It's just not something that American Jews have been used to for generations. And I think, I'm entering, I don't know, fifth decade of activism and involvement. We live in a different America today. It's still not out of reach, but if you're expecting someone else to carry your water, we've discovered, partially through COVID, partially through October 7th, your own involvement in creating your own entity. I'm sure you came to a conclusion saying, from where I'm sitting, we need to do X, Y, and Z. When you took a look around over your back, you felt no one else was doing it or the job wasn't being done well enough. So I think the answer to your challenge, your question is, instead of going into the conspiracy end, in which Boaz can have another 2-hour program, I think the real answer is you are the answer. By example, that you're rolling up your sleeves and you're signaling to other American Jews it's okay to use your skill sets to defend yourself. We still have the worldview of looking out for the rights of everyone, but now's the time where American Jews need help, and charity begins at home.
Go ahead, Jordan, please.
I would like to add regarding Michael's question, and I thought it'd be wise to go after Rabbi Cooper this time instead of before. He always has something wise to say, and it makes me maybe look a little better. I would like to say, I think there are two real elements of anti-Semitism, I would argue three, in American society right now. On the very right, we kind of have this nativist, isolationist type of anti-Semitism, which we kind of see with Thomas Massey, people who see America being inundated by debt. We're over $30 trillion in debt, and many are concerned about the future of this country. Some people believe in conspiracies that Jewish power must be behind America and the spending habits and whatnot. And they blame America's relationship with Israel, and they spotlight that as the foremost matter in our foreign affairs spending that must inherently cause this debt. It's simply not true. We have, of course, on the left, this very international type of anti-Semitism in which people believe that America should have a greater role in the affairs of international affairs, but they're not consistent where they believe America's money should go to. Many might support defense funding to Ukraine, but they won't support defense funding to Israel, primarily the Squad. And they will try to use whatever power they can to ostracize the Jewish state, to make it appear as though it is un-American to support the Jewish state. And effectively what they've done is not just ostracize the Jewish state itself, but its supporters. And we're seeing for maybe the first time in history in anti-Semitism, where it's not so much about Jews not being wanted in this country, but also not being wanted in another land as well. And this is a particularly dangerous anti-Semitism, as is every other form of anti-Semitism. And then, of course, we have the Islamist element of anti-Semitism, which is gaining more and more traction in the US, because in large part, as Rabbi Cooper noted, sometimes foreign funding, but also a local domestic presence. I mean, I live in Texas, and not too far from my house was where the Holy Land Foundation was, one of a former financing front for Hamas. And unfortunately, over time, these institutions have gotten stronger, more organized, and more collaborating with one another. And so why is anti-Semitism festering right now? Anti-Semitism has always festered. It's just adapted according to the economic theme of today, according to social themes of today, which have incorporated traditional elements of anti-Semitism as they have also evolved. And I think October 7th, unfortunately, unleashed a lot of that underlying current of anti-Semitism by forcing people, anti-Israel activists, to either double down on supporting the heinous deeds of the resistance, which I don't refer to them as that, but such as movements as Hamas and the PIJ. Unfortunately, instead of coming out against the heinous acts that these movements committed on October 7th, they unfortunately doubled down. And I don't want to say willful idiots, but naive, the ignorant, and sometimes the disdainful decided to join their cause and empower it.
I think that's fantastic. I couldn't have asked for a better question from Michael, and I couldn't have asked for a better person to answer it than you. It's willful idiots is what we're full of, and I think it's really important that we didn't just we could have very easily de-evolved this chat into just talking about the squad, and it wouldn't be that lazy, because I mean we do have Don here who's trying to unseat a member of the squad, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm unbiased here. I absolutely am rooting for him there. And it would be doing a disservice to intellectual honesty, though, if we wouldn't have also talked about the fact that there is anti-Semitism in both parties. One party is not the Jewish party versus the non-Jewish party or anti-Semites. We've simply got good people on both sides, and we've got really lousy people on both sides. I know my little reference there. So the question is, you know, I remember years ago, and Don, I want you to chime in next because I know you were about to speak. So this is not me taking over a new question. But I remember years ago asking my brother, you know, I'm the youngest in the family, and I trusted him with his political expertise more than myself. And I said, who do you think I should be more is a bigger concern in America? The anti-Semitism on the left or on the right? And I think this was around the time of Poway, right? And of the shooting, for people who don't know, but of the mass shooting in Poway. And I said, it could have been Tree of Life. And his answer at the time was, it's a no-brainer. Anti-Semitism on the right is far more dangerous because the left aren't the ones shooting up synagogues. The left are saying what they say, but the right is actually, you know, Heil Hitlering and shooting up synagogues. And, you know, Ku Klux Klanning. It's not hard to say 10 times fast. So, but you know, time passes. I don't know if I feel that way anymore. Maybe the left.
Boaz, you just said Ku Klux Klan, and there is no left or right. The Ku Klux Klan leader actually endorsed Ilhan Omar.
Yeah,
So
irony.
Show you.
Irony of ironies of how the lines are being blurred. Absolutely. So I don't know that I can really feel like, you know, I deferred to my brother, you know, whenever that was, but I don't know that I feel that way anymore. And I feel like the pervasiveness of it is just getting to everybody, and most scarily enough to the young people. Don, I would like you to please chime in because I don't want to take away the spotlight from you. Unmute. Don's very polite. He wants to be muted when we're talking.
I went to a presentation here in the Twin Cities by a journalist from the Israeli Times, Aviv Retting Gur.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, and I learned a lot from his lectures. Brilliant guy. And he talked about the fact that as in the Industrial Revolution brought people in from the farms, and their identities with their villages and their peasant lifestyle was now changed to in big cities especially to be easily manipulated to be more nationalistic. And their identity was now I'm German or I'm Russian versus I'm this little villager. And all of that then stood in contrast to the Jewish identity, which was strong and resilient enough to not be totally washed away by national identity. It was a sub-identity, a subgroup of people that you could not scrub clean of their identity. Even now today in America, everybody wants to be white, and Jews are considered white. But if you hang around with a Jew long enough, they know their history very well. They identify with their heritage very well. Whereas a guy from Poland might just say, hey, I'm just white. And so what that does is that the Jewish community stands out voluntarily, where the Black community stands out involuntarily, right? But the results are the same. We don't want you, you don't belong. You're not one of us. We're going to target you and scapegoat you for everything that goes wrong in our society. And now Trump is using the immigrant community, which is convenient because they have a certain coloring also, and they're people of color. And so it's all a part of that manipulation. Scapegoating then becomes the opportunity of scapegoating to unify the rest of the country or the nation is to identify that group that is identifiable and put all of the responsibility for the country's problems on them. And then the catharsis of destroying, punishing, killing, and maiming them is what's going to bring everybody together. So I believe actually anti-Semitism could very easily bring the right and the left extremes together because it unites the nation, or it unites them and creates a kind of solidarity and belonging that that fulfills a certain human need. I hope it doesn't get that way, but Ilhan and Marjorie Taylor Greene have taken several votes that against Democrats. They voted together on Turkey. They voted together largely on Russia. They voted together in many cases on the infrastructure bill and opposing that. And then, of course, anti-Semitism is becoming a common theme. So, yeah, these are phenomena. And when people are looking for belonging and unity, the identification of a common scapegoat is a very tempting opportunity.
And I love, regarding unity, I love that I joked about it mostly before, but I love the fact that everybody can vote in this election, that this is not an exclusionary election, because otherwise, by default, if you think about it, there's a lot of people who have a lot of ways that they want to be democratic, but sometimes they're just shut out of it because they didn't have the foresight to realize, oh, I could change my ticket and so on. I actually think it's a far more openly democratic process by allowing anybody to do that. So I can joke all I want about wishing I was able to vote there, but at the end of the day, if somebody's there, I love that anybody who's of legal age and has voting ability can vote. So I think that's wonderful. I want to pivot because even though every time anybody speaks, it makes me want to get more into that, I always have to deal with people who are on their different time frames. Rabbi Cooper is going to be our next casualty who's going to have to be able to leave in about 5 minutes. So I do want to ask a final question to him and his tremendous expertise. Rabbi Cooper, our world changed on October 7th, and we can pretty much say it's a sort of a forever thing, like 9/11 for people. This is now that sort of new infamous date in history. I think you would agree that the initial shock we assumed was going to bring great sympathy and empathy for Israel. I assumed it, but it's not what took place. Here we are 300 days later, 300 days. That's a long time for the hostages who are left, alive or buried. What are the different areas that the Hamas war is impacting, and what do you see as opportunities for us to push back on it?
Wow, well, that would be a great teaser for your next 2-hour Zoomer. I would just say that October 7th, absolutely, our assumption at our center was actually, it was encapsulated in an interview I did on the 10th with a journalist based in Paris who was Spanish for one of the major wire services, and said openly, look, my sympathies are with the Palestinians, but I have to rethink my approach to this issue because, quote, I didn't sign up for this. That encapsulated what I thought we would be experiencing. Instead, what we saw is and we had seen it already previously with Hamas, the export of the Hamas genocidal narrative, starting out usually, in this case also, in Germany, on the streets of Germany, about raping your mothers and sisters. Quickly, by Friday, which was the eve of Shabbat in Golders Green, London, where you had SUVs with Palestinians spouting the same thing: we're going to come here and rape your wives and sisters. And this is after what we knew what happened on the 7th. And then coming to places like Montreal, Toronto, New York, Chicago, LA, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the shock, and it still is a shock, to see how quickly the pro-Palestinian efforts and campaigns morphed into pro-Hamas campaigns. No longer discussions about two-state solution, where the borders would be, would Jerusalem be a shared capital, et cetera, et cetera. It morphed to a battle for Israel's very legitimacy as a state among the nations, and the demonization of Jews and non-Jews who had the audacity to identify as Zionists. I will say one other thing. I was the spokesman for the Jewish organizations at the Durban United Nations Conference, World Conference Against Racism, just before 9/11. It was in Durban, South Africa. And so I already had back then a front row seat for the narrative that we're fighting till this day, which is use the blood libels, use the A word, apartheid, repeat the lie often enough, either sideline and silence human rights NGOs or win them over. And of the 3,500 NGOs at that event, 6 stood with the Jews. There were 6 German NGOs. We got a peek at, what was going on. So I work for an institution that promotes tolerance. I've devoted most of my adult life to this vision. When you're confronted with absolute evil, you better be prepared to eradicate that evil. And only after you do that will you be in a position to connect with people who have the similar worldview that you have. So, for example, Don correctly mentioned the Quakers during World War II, some of the courageous folks. But I know that for Quakers in Germany, there weren't that many, a huge challenge theologically. They're confronted with the system that was absolute evil. Their theology is you don't pick up a weapon in anger against anyone. In the case of the Jewish people, we learned already from the Nazi Holocaust that we don't have the luxury of turning the other cheek. So what we've all experienced is this amazing quiet resolve, I would say, of the vast majority of Israelis, whatever their political differences, and you see them on display all the time, to go and eradicate that evil. It's them or us. For those people who've been advising the Palestinian side, I think most of them, unless they're directly involved with Hamas, understand that what's going on now, including the demonstrations in the United States that are pro-Hamas demonstrations, they are not helping the Palestinian cause. They're burying the Palestinian cause. And in the meantime, American Jews, 3rd, 4th, 5th generation of, living in the world's greatest democracy, that, shiny hill, the light of the shiny hill is Yale, Columbia, MIT, Stanford, etc. When kids came home and had just experienced for the first time in their lives Jew hatred, that not only woke them up, it woke up their grandparents who no longer speak Yiddish in the house, whose a long time they have. There's an entire segment of our community that has gotten a shock to their whole worldview. And what's important, I think, for the rest of the Jewish community is a negative identity based on suffering. It will never cut it. It may be the wake-up call. We've got a lot of work to do with our own, however we identify as Jews. We have now learned in the United States, in the UK, in France, in England, in Canada, in Australia, our enemies don't care what kind of Jews we are. They just hate Jews. So we need to be strong. For Israel, it means militarily, but also society-wise. And I think for world Jewry, we have to be strong spiritually and values-wise. That's not automatic. We've got a lot of catching up to do. And I would argue, as we've spoken before, and Don Samuels, I'm incredibly impressed by you. I can hardly believe that you've entered the political realm. We have obligations as Jews here in this country to be a part of the democratic process, or don't complain. We have an obligation, as Mr. Wiesenthal said, freedom is not a gift from heaven. It has to be fought for and earned every day. So we have ML Kings, we have the Wiesenthals, we have the Wiesel. It's really time to stand up and be counted. And if we're not prepared to do what a guy like Michael Sinentsky has done, then don't complain. You know, in America, you can still disappear if you're ready to pay the price. You can still be accepted, in some quarters if you're a Jew, as long as you give up your identity, your self-respect, and your concern. I'll just end with one other thing, and that is, for people who want to, I heard a great rabbi, one of the greatest rabbis of our time, his name, Rabbi Asher Weiss, a brilliant scholar from Jerusalem. He spoke at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in LA earlier this week. A genius, okay, in many levels. He started off by saying, I see there are about, 300 or 400 people here. There are a lot of crazy people here. What do you mean? Well, how many people book tickets to fly to a war zone? You got a lot of crazy people here who are booking a passage to go to Jerusalem or to Tel Aviv or to the crazy people. How do you explain it? You don't have, and it's not enough. You see a lot of Ukrainian Americans rushing to go to a war zone? It'd be crazy. The answer is, if you want to know the secret of the Jewish people, he said, we're not just a people, we're a family. And that is, I think, we're coming up on Tisha B'Av. That's a nachama. That gives us, reason to hope, but it's also a massive obligation to get off our you-know-whats and engage with our neighbors and go away from some of those labels and try to keep that sense of unity going forward.
Just one thing to what the rabbi said. He mentioned about protection and we have to be able to defend ourselves. It's striking that there's people right now in politics and who hold, office in this country who vote to stop something like the Iron Dome, as an example, where the Iron Dome is just literally there to defend. And imagine if there was no Iron Dome. So forget about also how many Israelis would be dead without the Iron Dome, but imagine the response that Israel would have to do to every single time a missile or a rocket would get through and hit another, indiscriminate civilian target. Think about the bloodshed on both sides. And you have people in Congress, in Senate, who are voting against supplying defense to stop bloodshed. And I just think that, like, just the ignorance right there. And now,
Well, Michael, you can go one step further, and maybe this could be useful to Don also. They took out the head of political Hamas the other day. He's the author of the concept that the more Palestinian men, women, and children are killed, the better it is for their cause. That is his credo as he descends to the depths of hell. And people who vote against what you just said, the Iron Dome, they're effectively embracing his vision. As far as they're concerned, they don't really care at the end of the day. Anyone's going to be living in the Holy Land, just as long as it's not the Jews. And if a lot of innocent people, some of their own co-religionists get killed along the way, so be it. They are so distant from American values and the basic foundations of our great nation that at the end of the day, they represent a greater threat to America than they do to Israel, because Israel's not waiting to find out if they're serious or not serious. We did a lousy job in the 1930s. And then Mr. Wiesenthal said, we had this thing called radio. We started hearing these speeches from a crazy guy with a funny mustache named Adolf Hitler. We made jokes of him early on, and by the time we woke up, it was too late. We live in a completely different world in the 21st century. We know that these threats are real, and with the help of the United States, and now Israel has helped the U.S. as well, Iron Dome, there'll be other systems as well that will protect democracies all over the world. But in the meantime, you're 100% right when you have people in Congress who vote against an Iron Dome that gives, really, in a sense, the Palestinian people another chance down the line when things quiet down, because Israel is not destroyed, and my 8 grandchildren in the Holy Land are not, God forbid, hurt or worse. The Iron Dome is giving peace a second chance. Anyone who votes against it is not interested in peace. They're interested in endorsing and promoting the Hamas narrative.
I understand why Boaz brought Don now. I'm connecting the dots.
Okay, good night. And Don, best of luck. I'm not allowed to endorse any candidate, but let's just say that if you win, I'll be sending you a night. I don't know if you drink scotch or not. You have a much broader, if you drink scotch, that's fine. Otherwise, it would have to be kosher wine. If you can pull this one off, I'll be getting your home address, not for a check, but for l'chaim.
Thank you.
Best of luck. God bless.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rabbi Cooper, for being on. Thank God the rabbi's gone. Now we can all start cursing and being full of debauchery. No, it's just this is honestly fantastic. And something that I was letting him go. I didn't want to keep him longer for his own sake, but he mentioned something right then and there. And Don, feel free to just, I know you've been very politely muting in between. There's 4 of us. Just keep yourself unmuted now. Let's just interrupt each other as we will. He mentioned about how these protests in America and around the world are actually, not helpful for the Palestinians, which is what most people say who are not pro-Hamas. Let me tell you something. It was just a week ago that I had my most recent recording before this of an episode, which will come out after this, since we're trying to get this out, in double time because of the elections. And that was me talking to a whole group of Palestinians. Yes, that's right. I talked to a bunch of Palestinians. Now, these were not pro-Hamas Palestinians. These were a bunch of very influential people, many of whom I'm sure some of us even follow online, like Yasmin Mohammed and Hamza Khawadi and John Aziz and Ahmed Fuad Al-Khatib. And if people watching this don't know who they are, they should start, because nothing ever moves forward without dialogue. Now, I'm not going to have this dialogue with somebody who is waving a Hamas flag, because there needs to be an openness for dialogue, for there to be real dialogue, not just waiting for your turn so you can yell death to Israel. But this was a group of fantastic human beings who are all had so many of the same messages, which included that from the river to the sea is a horrible chant that needs to stop. That all of these, and specifically that all of these protests, not just what the rabbi said that they're not helpful, they all said that they are actually harmful to the Palestinian people, these protests, that they're terrible, that you're not doing us any favors, you're making things worse. And some of them, Ahmed himself told me, he went to the UCLA one, and he went to try to tell them, and he wore a different shirt that said something, I forget what it is, I could look it up, but it's something along the lines of from the river to the sea, two-state solution, basically something like that. These protesters were just rude to him. And these are like a bunch of, white, black, or brown privileged kids who are over there for the most part. And they're talking to a real Palestinian who's lost dozens of family members in Gaza as a result of the retaliation from Israel, right? Which he certainly wishes didn't happen, right? Which I completely don't blame him for, right? That's awful what happened to him. And he's got people who are protesting, screaming and talking down to him. He's the real Palestinian there. It's disgusting. He ends up getting death threats from people who are pro-Palestinian. And he's like, you're not pro-Palestinian. I'm Palestinian. You're not speaking for me. You're actually hurting my people. So I'm really, really excited I was able to have that conversation. Yes, it could be a little uncomfortable to be talked to by people who also are not pleased with Israel responding. So I just wanted to say, we've been talking about how important it is to cross party lines, to have this sort of fantasy of a unity ticket, to have, Republicans and Democrats just be less extreme and be able to talk together. It's just as, if not more important, for Muslims and for Jews to be able to do this, for Palestinians and Israelis to do this, which brings me to a question for you, Don. There's a friend of mine who is not Jewish, who is a very intelligent Black man who works for NASA. And he said, correct me / him if you're wrong. He said, your district has, I believe, the second most Muslims in the US. Correct so far?
Second most, we have the most Somalis.
Somalis.
In the world outside of.
In the world. Amazing.
Somalia, yeah.
So his question is, how do you plan on to help heal both the anti-Semitic and anti-Islam streaks in America, and basically helping to unify these extremely fractured communities, especially in your district, if you win, which I hope.
Well, the district is largely fractured because of Ilhan. Without Ilhan, it would not be fractured. In fact, when we sit to talk to Somali leaders and imam and social leaders, the Middle East never comes up. Surprisingly, they want to talk about fentanyl, addiction of their children. They've come to America to achieve the American dream for their children, and they're getting caught up in gang crimes and become a large part of the prison population. That's how basic and urgent their everyday needs are. And Ilhan is too highly positioned for that. And she is taking on global issues for her global ambitions. And so the community has gotten very fractured on her, and are actually part of the exhausted majority, and are looking for change. And so the Somali population here, which is Muslim, is one of our opportunities, it turns out.
So I love your term, exhausted majority. I've never heard that before, and I'm going to steal that if you don't mind. But can you tell me now, clearly she has made things worse over there, and you're not going to get an argument out of me from that. Assuming that you win, okay, whether that's a reality or not, which is a reality that I'm going to manifest for you. I'm going to put you on my Pinterest board. Can you tell me what you're going to be able to do to help undo the damage she's done?
Well, first of all, my rhetoric is already uniting versus dividing, and I find that people on the Somali community, both the ones who are just simply Somalis and the ones who are a subset of the Somali community that feels like a minority, even within that context, are what they say is they're not looking for someone to take their side. This is a theme we hear all the time from both Jews and Somalis. We're not looking for someone to take our side. We're looking for someone who is impartial. And so I think the opening is very much there to create dialogue, and we have started to try to put together teams from both sides, both communities, to have a dialogue. It's a little challenging because in anything like that, the press wants to come, you know, and people are going to need to be vulnerable. And so it's a little bit difficult to put together, but we want it to be a safe space. I was on a talk with a guy named Steve Young, who runs an organization called Cool Round Table, and he was introduced to the Muslim theology by some friends of his, and that made him try to dig deep to see the spiritual guidelines, if you want to put it, within each of the spiritual communities, religious communities, that have common threads that will lead towards the capacity for peaceful coexistence. These are teachings that were originally from Muhammad and from teachers within the Muslim community. And so I was on a talk, on a Zoom talk with rabbis and imams just last week, discussing that. And I think part of that group is going to be able to be a core of that discussion, because there are scholars who have thought about these things and have studied the theological bases in Christianity, Muslim, and Jewish religions that have common threads of mutuality, welcoming the stranger, doing no harm, serving and being loyal to the nation in which you live. Those are common threads that we can explore and strengthen as we bring this community together to bind up the wounds.
Do you feel like you have a ridiculously uphill battle, though, going against somebody who's not just an incumbent, but she seems, unless social media is just misleading, which it often is, it feels like she has this massive cheer squad. Let's just call them a cheer squad. Hey, I've never thought of that, right? She's got this cheer squad behind her. How do you, I mean, is that feel like a massive uphill battle, or is that just mirage and they're just
you know, I grew up in as a Christian kid in a very biblical oriented denomination, and so I know all the Old Testament or the Hebrew scriptures.
David versus Goliath.
Yeah, David and Goliath, Samuel, David and Goliath, Joseph and his brothers, and Pharaoh and all of them, and a lot of these were kids, Samuel and Eli, and you know, all of these young men, right, who were caught up in a very tumultuous times, and the only way that they could follow God was to stand up to the giants. And there wasn't only one giant, right? Daniel in the lion's den kind of thing. And so I cut my teeth on those stories. I believed them. And so I had no delusion that it was going to be easy when you stood up for something. And then to see the civil rights movement come along and demonstrate it in my own time, where people from the lowest rank on the social hierarchy, at the bottom of the caste system, dreamt that they could not just set themselves free, but they could help to set the nation free. And they actually initiated actions that changed the laws, that transformed American society, so that I, as a Black man, could be the first Black person in the 6 companies I worked for in the history of those companies. That's what happened. That was the nature of that transformation. And so when I purport to become a leader or to try to continue the movement, I moved into the most challenged community in my city because that's part of how it's done. And so when I face Ilhan, it's like, this is how it's worked. This is what you do. And if you stand there and you're not afraid, people come behind you. You have God with you. You have, if you want to say, the universe with you. You have anthropology behind you. This is how humanity works. And so I consider this to be a normal challenge to make the world a better place.
Incredible. We're going to be wrapping up soon because we've already gone over time with all of you, which is amazing. I want to have each of you just say one final words, but I do want to ask you one last question yourself, Don, which is okay if this is out of place for you to answer. But the elephant in the room is not just you having an election in 2 weeks, but it's actually even before that, the election against the other David versus Goliath, which is Wesley Bell versus Cori Bush this Tuesday. Unfortunately, because this is so last minute, we weren't able to get Wesley Bell on here too, which certainly would have been very cool. So let me ask you, whether or not you have a relationship or you know Wesley personally, do you have anything you want to say that you do feel like is not out of place in terms of that particular election, since that's Tuesday next week? And she is also a member of the squad, if that's not obvious.
Yeah, well, I know that America is realizing the fallibility of the philosophies of the squad, that this was a flirtation with danger or a flirtation with extremes. We wanted to give our young people an opportunity, and the ones who were stepping forward were not prepared and were not in alignment with the vast majority, the silent majority, the frustrated majority of Americans. And we apologize for making this mistake. I have voted for Ilhan, so I'm a contributor to that experiment. And the American people, like me, are coming to our senses that we have made a mistake and we need to correct it. And we can believe that this is not an isolated attempts against people who are extreme. This is the nation that we are a part of that has come to this conclusion. And if we're willing to brave the fire of the pushback and political correctness sometimes, that we're being conservatives, we're stoolies or pawns to the extreme right in taking on these people. If we are willing to withstand those criticisms, I am quite confident that that kind of extreme left is going to go away because it's unsustainable and it's dividing our country, and more and more people are realizing it with every election, by the way.
Yes.
More and more are realizing it. And I believe that in our election, we've crossed that line, the majority, and we will see a victory in August, and you will see a victory on Tuesday.
Amen. You have an invitation openly in my house for Shabbat dinner when you come to Los Angeles, and it's I'm sure Rabbi Cooper will want to come. I really hope that that everything you're saying is absolutely going to come to pass. It's sad to know, and we all know this is true, it's sad to know that as these people get taken down by hopefully you and so on and Wesley Bell, that they don't just go down quietly, they go down by digging their heels in with more anti-Semitic tropes, right? AIPAC, which is a bipartisan group, suddenly becomes this bad guy, right? The big, deep-pocketed Jews, right? It's disgusting. And AIPAC absolutely endorses people on both parties. The whole point they're trying to do is make sure that it helps Jewish interests. That's not a bad thing. There are groups out there that are super PACs for every underrepresented minority out there, and Jews are included there. So it's sad to know that as they go down, they don't go down quietly or nicely, or graciously. And even if they don't go down, they don't even accept it graciously. So I really, really, really am appreciative of you, and I'm glad that I'm not paid by anybody, so I can just say that I would endorse you myself. Final words for each of you. Jordan, any final thoughts?
I think first and foremost, just such an honor to be hosted on this panel, such an honor to see potentially future hope for America. Obviously, I can't endorse anybody in my capacity working for Stand With Us. I'm sure you all know what I think internally just by channeling the cosmos here, as we spoke about earlier. I think the challenge regarding anti-Semitism ahead is going to be one that is tricky. Jews forever have lived in diaspora in many different countries at the time, thinking that said land at the time would be a good current venue for Jewish life, and it eventually didn't turn out to be so. That being said, America is the greatest democracy that has ever existed. I think Jews at the same time need to be cautiously optimistic about the future and need to be deeply cautious in the signs that they see manifest at the same time. But I think it's critical that as Jews, as non-Jews, as people of good conscience, as good Americans, we need to think about the future, and we need to understand that we are a light unto the world. And it's not just simply a matter of the world looking unto us in terms of how we conduct ourselves, but we also have to lead, as many people on this panel today suggested. And so it's been an honor to be featured, and happy to help however I can when it comes to combating anti-Semitism and misinformation about Israel. And the one last piece I would just like to add is that we will continue to push on with IHRA adoption throughout the states. We've been fortunate enough to be part of the coalition that has now passed binding legislation in 13 to 14 states. And we look forward to carrying on as other people here continue to look forward and carrying on with their virtuous mission.
Well, it's an honor to have you on this, honestly. I really do appreciate it. Michael, last thoughts and last words from you.
So thank you so much for putting this together and having me on here. Just from everything we've heard tonight, I just feel like anti-Semitism has zero place in American politics and America at all. We have to have tolerance. And I think most importantly, we have to have a reset. So the people that are in office, that are spewing hate just to stay in power because, they have their followers that are just holding on to every word they say, but they're really doing a disservice to everyone. We have to have a reset. And, just from a business standpoint of being an entrepreneur, who has the most power in someone's business? It's the consumers. So everyone in a democracy, it's the voters. So the voters have to unify and come together and root out hatred. And this is something we have to do, and speaking out against it, it's going to cost you relationships, but it's the right thing to do. So my last word is be on the right side of history, and let's root out hatred and anti-Semitism together.
Oh man, I love it. This is fantastic. And Don, last but absolutely not least, if you can put your camera back on, I'd like to get some final words from you. I know that Don is still there, just camera off. There you go. Oh, that was a good bait and switch. We have successfully done something that if I describe what it is,
Michael Jackson.
I will get canceled in all of society when I say what just happened.
So Don is joining you just 1 second here. He had to step out for a second.
That's hilarious.
That was possibly funnier than anything I've ever had happen here.
That was hilarious.
It was, yeah, he said Michael Jackson. I was gonna say Michael Jackson, Sammy. All right, Don. So before getting all of us canceled from every point of society, any final words from you, my friend?
No, I just want to say again, emphasize that the connection between the Jewish community and the African American community is historic. It's recorded in our community in word and video, with people speaking about the ways that they stuck together to fight anti-Semitism and racism. And I would like to see when now that the Jewish community is again under pressure and experiencing prejudice, that we keep those relationships strong. Because as the Rabbi said, our two communities are always the first in line to be the scapegoats for insecurities. And we have an opportunity to keep our relationships strong so that we can proactively be prepared to be leaders, moral leaders of our nation. Yeah, I think it was Jordan who said that you're the light in the world, and I believe African Americans are also a light. And I think the reason for us being a light is because of our vulnerabilities. I think that vulnerable people bring a light because they hold the seeds for equity. No, people who are not vulnerable cannot understand and have to be taught justice. And the only people who can teach them, or the people who can teach them best, are the people who experience injustice. And so we have a strange calling and a strange symbiosis as our two communities. I think we're called together for the healing of America and healing of all relationships that America touches.
Justice you shall pursue, if you know the Hebrew phrase, tzedek tirdaf, and absolutely in line with what you're saying. And yeah, Jordan, you wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, just to Don's point, actually, when I was suggesting light, I was suggesting we as common Americans, Jews, non-Jews, are light upon a shining hill, and we have a duty together to make this world a better place and to promote our vision and our light. And so just want to share that message of unity before I drop off.
It's fantastic.
And I'd like to also add that, of course, it is not peculiar to Jews and Blacks. Jews and Blacks just have a certain kind of involuntary aspect to this because of the convictions and the identities. But there are people all over the country who are looking for, who are also hurt and are also in the margins. And in fact, that is our purpose, to help to bring all of us together, and not individually, not separately, but to bring all people together across the finish line towards justice and equality. And that's our calling. And I wish every kid who is experiencing, I'm so little, I'm being bullied, would not dream of carrying a gun with 50 bullets in it, but dream of becoming the change maker that will eventually understand other bullied people and be able to create a new school community or school climate or a city climate or a national climate, because the world is looking for that resonance. The majority of the people are looking for the resonance. And so much so that they have many people in my community, in this district, have seen Ilhan's multiple identities of minority. She's Muslim, she is a woman, she is Black, she's an immigrant and a refugee, and said, this woman carries in her body the components for bringing us together, not knowing that, no, the character was the more important thing. And so people are looking for that resonance. They've just been misled. And by Ilhan, and to a large degree by the squad, and now it's time for us to have a more mature appraisal of the qualities that are needed to lead us out of injustice into justice and into a more perfect union.
I will give my final words based on what you're saying. First of all, regarding the African-American/Black community, I am planning on having a very important talk, which is going to be on that topic with Jewish Black people and also non-Jewish Black people, to talk about this absolutely crucial and tragic divide that's happened between us. And you might be too busy, hopefully, setting new laws in your district, but I think you'd be fantastic to have on it with your worldly experience. And, you know, I want us to leave that my own blessing for all of us in the future is I pray that in the not too distant future, and certainly for when my kids grow up, that we and they can happily, with a kippah on their head, with a Mogen David out, and be able to go and attend a Black Lives Matter rally and a queer rally, right? And a pride rally, right? And a women's march and all of the different ones. But a lot's going to have to change for that to happen. The leadership of those groups is going to have to go bye-bye because it is unbelievably exclusionary to Jews. And the entire ingredient makeup of it has been extremely anti-Semitic. So I really hope we can get back to a point in time which we had, which you remember and I remember, and Rabbi Cooper remembers, which is a time when we were able, when being Jewish and Black and progressive were not conflicting terminologies and identities. And unfortunately now it's become something where it's like, well, I'd love to help your cause, but you kind of think I'm a genocidal maniac because of my existence and my caring about self-determination for my people. So my blessing for all of us, for Republicans and Democrats, to get their heads out of their asses and to see, the rabbi's gone, I could say that, and to actually start realizing that we can all be in this together and we don't have to have separate Venn diagrams. We can come together and coalesce and care about each other. It doesn't have to be an us or them thing. And I hope we get to that point one day. I hope that's not a naive hope. And you're going to help us get there, Don. Thank you. You're muted again because you're so ridiculously polite, but thank you.
I'm 100% in. I'm on board, and that's the struggle.
Yes, amen. My people will talk to your people. All right,
Okay.
everybody. Thank you very, very much for the last few hours. This is fantastic, and I will thank my editor, Mike Berger, who I will name check because he's going to work his butt off this weekend while he's also Shomer Shabbat to get this ready so we can get it out before the election on Tuesday. So thank you, everybody.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Chosen Links. If you like what you heard, feel free to share this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on our socials at Boaz Hepner on X and Facebook and at Hepner.Boaz on Instagram.